Welcome to Justin Perspective. I'm Jared Justin, and let's jump into it. The State Department has just made some adjustments to our country reports that reorients our focus as a nation when it comes to foreign policy, that is, back to founding principles of America. Now, what are those country reports? Well, the State Department's annual country reports on human rights practices are congressionally mandated surveys of human rights conditions in nearly every country in the world. These guide U.S. foreign policy when it comes to things like aid that we're giving to nations, when it comes to accepting asylum seekers, when it comes to strategic partnerships. These are a way an administration, our Trump administration specifically here, is prioritizing certain values to influence their decision-making in the foreign policies. So, what changes were made? Well, the Biden administration had made changes to focus on what it considered the important human rights, which were things like gay rights, women's rights. Well, the Trump administration has updated it to focus on were what they are calling the inalienable rights. And that is a familiar term because, of course, it comes straight out of the Declaration of Independence that all men are endowed with inalienable rights given to them by their Creator. Obviously an appeal to God, but specifically when it comes to inalienable rights, the statement being made there is that these are rights that apply to all people, no matter who they are or where they come from. They're given to them by God, not government, and therefore government should not infringe on them. And amongst those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, most of these updates focus around life, which of course is fitting as it's the first of these rights. All others follow not just on the page, but in principle. If you don't have the right to life, then you don't have the right to pursue happiness. So let's get into some of the changes. One of these applies to transgenderism. They are going to report now on state or legal policies that support chemical or surgical alteration for gender transition among minors. So what does this apply to? What right does this derive from? Well, I would argue the right to life. So when you perform chemical or surgical alteration on minors, you're sterilizing the child. Whether you believe in those alterations or not, it significantly impacts the fertility of that child permanently. So whether they want to detransition later or not, this has a major impact on them. So the State Department wants to know about it. And at what rate is it happening? Is the state funding this stuff? They want to know those things when they're making foreign policy in the future. They're going to report on abortion. That is the total number of annual abortions, but also, again, where's the funding coming from? Is the state itself funding the abortion? How much is the state pushing the abortion? Obviously, if a nation legalizes it but does not support it through things like funding, that's a different calculation than if the state is actually making these free. They're supporting these things. So that all plays into foreign policy calculations. They're also going to focus on euthanasia. Is a nation supporting euthanasia? Canada, of course, has been in the news a lot with its euthanasia program. Back in 2016, MAID was implemented, and over the subsequent decade, almost, the program has grown substantially. If you've looked at the numbers year over year, it grows exponentially every year. All the way up 23, it was well over 15,000 Canadians died through their MAID, Medical Assistance in Dying program, that year. That was almost 5% of all Canadian deaths that year were through the MAID program. Massive numbers. Now, of course, that program was originally billed for people who are on the doorstep of death, right? They're suffering, their treatments are expensive, and they're within months of dying, assuredly, anyways, which is how it's being billed in other nations and states as well to try to be passed. But it's honestly, it's one of the easiest examples of a slippery slope because of how much the program has expanded, and they're wanting to expand it further. You know, and I believe it's in 2027, the program is going to expand to include those who suffer solely from mental health conditions, including depression. I mean, how many people are depressed? Unfortunately, a lot of people at least pass through times when they're depressed. So that's going to be massive. But they're also looking at lowering the minimum age down to as low as 12, 16 without parental consent. So you can imagine all of the moody teenagers who go through breakups in high school who could potentially be eligible for this program with their depression and not need parental consent to pursue this program. They're even doing same-day treatment up there in certain cases. So massive expansion of that program. But this is obviously a right-to-life issue. I had somebody comment recently that the right to life includes the right to die. Well, that's really silly. First of all, you don't need a right to die. You're going to die, whether you have the right to it or not. So you don't need a right to die. And I would argue that because of that, there is no right to die that exists. I mean, what would that constitute? Do you solely apply that to the euthanasia? I don't know. If you're one of those, comment below and tell me why you think that. But obviously a right to life issue. So this is really good. This is the Trump administration refocusing its priorities around founding principles of this nation and asserting that these are inalienable rights, that no matter where you live, what culture you're a part of, you have these rights. Now, obviously, this in and of itself is not a foreign policy that we push on a nation. So if you disagree with these, don't get all hot and bothered. This is basically sunlight on these stats, but it is going to influence future foreign policy. And of course, at some point, inevitably, when a Democrat is back in the White House, this is likely going to be a report that changes as far as the parameters go. But frankly, they could use this information too, maybe in a way that I would disagree with. But the sunlight is good when it comes to these things, because these can be serious offenses. They're also going to report on the implementation of DEI or affirmative action like policies, especially in race, sex, caste, things like that, as well as a huge focus on freedom of speech. Of course, we've seen a number of freedom of speech violations by our American standards that have even made the news here from over in Europe, particularly. You know, there was the case, a couple of years ago of the lady who a block away from an abortion center was praying in her head on the sidewalk and was arrested. There's video of the officer approaching her, questioning her, and arresting her. You've got individuals, again, in Canada, government going after individuals like Jordan Peterson, for instance, for his beliefs and his content and things. So the internet policing. So this is good stuff for us to know. I know many are going to go after this and say, well, we don't believe in God and inalienable rights, and really you just need to care about the gay people or something. I don't really understand how you can object to more information, more statistics on these things. Again, it's not a policy of something that's going to change. It's just going to influence future policy. And I love that it's getting back to the literal lingo of our founding fathers and the core principles America was founded on. Declaration of Independence language. So this is really good stuff. Now, if you've stuck around this long, thank you so much. If you've seen my channel, this is my first video I have ever made in a full-length style for YouTube. So thank you so much for viewing. Obviously, I don't have the biggest, greatest setup here. Hopefully, if my channel does well, that could change in the future. This all started with the passing of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and me realizing that as a father, as a patriot, as a Christian, I don't like the direction our country is going, whether you're left or right. The fact that we cannot have peaceful dialogue and respect each other's disagreements is very sad to me. That actually pushes to violence. In fact, there's been multiple surveys showing how more than half of people surveyed believe that violence is at least somewhat justified if you have the wrong views politically. So that's a very sad state of affairs for our nation. I would like to see that fixed, and I'm going to do whatever small role I can play in fixing that. So I'm an average guy with an average job, just starting a YouTube channel, but I want to give some opinions on some of these news pieces. I love following the news. I have for a long time. And so I want to share some of my insights. Hopefully some of these news pieces are new information to you. You haven't seen them before. But even if not, maybe some of my opinions will enlighten some of my liberal viewers, maybe not change your mind, but at least help you understand kind of a mainstream conservative perspective on these things. So please like the video, comment. If you disagree, tell me why. Please, in good faith, voice your disagreement. I would love to hear your comments so we can dialogue. And you know what? Maybe I'll take one or two of those comments and make a video in the future answering those in that format. I would love to do that, so that could be in the future. And if you like the video, show some support. Subscribe, share it with a friend, like, and leave me some sugar in the comments. Thank you for coming. I'm Jared Justin, and this is Justin Perspective.